Hi, everyone. I hope you all are well. And I just want to encourage all my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, wherever they are in their Christian life right now. You may recognize some of these things that I may talk about, and you may find yourself in some of the things that I'm talking about. And I want to encourage you for wherever you're at. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24 says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 says, "And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." In this race, when we become a Christian, when we start going out and running in this race, a lot of us are very excited and full of energy and vigor in the beginning. And it's good to keep that, whenever you can. But some of us get the wrong idea that this Christian life is like a sprint. We go all out and put in all our energy. And the thing is, a lot of times this misguided energy, we start trying to do things that we're guessing the Lord wants us to do. And we just sprint. But as you know, you can't win a marathon by sprinting the entire time. And that's where a lot of us get tempted to get discouraged when we start doing a lot of things for God, but things just don't seem to work out very well. And a lot of times that's because we're doing it in our own wisdom and strength. And so that's a very normal part of the Christian life. I've been through that, and I imagine many of you have been through that. But then if some of you think that life is supposed to be a sprint where there's a lot of emotions and energy all the time and a lot of supernatural things all the time, and when that doesn't happen and the emotions are not there and you don't see the hand of God as often as you did before, you could get very discouraged. You could think, what did I do wrong? What's happening, Lord? Was my experience even real to begin with? And you have to remember that this life is like a marathon and not a sprint. And so many people, they even created religions that made the Christian life so complex and difficult. There's offshoots of Christianity that I'll call cults. They'll add in all these different things you need to do in order to be saved, all sorts of things you need to do in order to stay saved. But the truth is, once you're a Christian, you belong to Jesus. And instead of getting into all the complicated things, I believe the way you move forward in this life, to run forward, not backwards, sideways, or just stand still, is to simply trust and obey God. You trust His word, His promises, and you obey Him in the best way you know how. And that's how we run forward in this race. And so there's no reason to complicate and overthink it. You read the Bible, and God wants us to walk by faith. Not just faith, but walk by faith. Move forward in obedience. That is faith and works working together. And so focus on these two simple things, trust and obey God. And so a lot of us start with the sprints and we start slowing down, and we have to let go of depending on emotions and different things like that. And you keep on trusting in God though. You keep on walking because you've experienced Him, you've known Him, He's revealed Himself to you. And so that is God's grace to keep you going. But sometimes we have to walk through the valleys, as some of you are in now. Like in Psalm 23, verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." This is probably one of the main purposes of this YouTube channel, is to help Christians go through these valleys, through the valley of the shadow of death. When it says shadow, for some of us, it is pitch dark. You don't know where you're going. This race that started out so happy in the sunlight, sprinting full of vigor, has now slowed down to a place where you can't see where you're going. It's dark. It hurts. And so some of you, including myself, I did this. Instead of just running, you slow down and you try to feel your way through. You try to see the best you can, even though you can't see anything. You feel your way through, and that's what you're trusting in, that you're going to get through it somehow. And that is a very dangerous way to go through the valley. And what happens often is you'll fall for traps. You'll find unhealthy coping mechanisms. And that could be drugs. It could be sex. It could be pornography. I mean, it could be a lot of other sins. And it could really even be hobbies that are not sinful, but you start idolizing it and just trying to cope that way. All these coping mechanisms is like feeling through a pitch dark room, and you're just going to fall into these traps. And I fell into some of these traps. Like, I tried to really get a medication that worked for me, and it hurt so bad every time, like literally, because these drugs had, like for me, the medication has such a bad side effect on me. And it was, if you're walking through the valley, I felt like I fell off into the pit. But by God's grace, I got back up and I kept going. But unfortunately, I kept on feeling around and trying to see where I'm going. But the way through the valley is by trusting in God's promises. That's like grabbing a hold of Jesus' hand. It's that secure. And then at that point, you don't need to see anything. You don't need to see through the darkness. You don't need to feel anything. You have a hold of Jesus' hand by trusting in his promises, in his words. And so you rely on what he has said, like his grace is sufficient for you even in the valleys. He will sustain you. He will see you through, and that he's even working the things in the valleys for your good. Just these are some examples, like in Jeremiah 29:11. He's not trying to hurt you here in the valley. He's trying to prosper you. That means you're going to be left off better now than before. And he has plans to give you a future and a hope. And there's examples laid out for us in the Old Testament and the New Testament on how Christians went through their times in the valley. And so this is a time where you grab a hold of Jesus' hand by his promises, and he pulls you through the valley. And through the valley experience, you come out with a lot of good. You become more like Jesus. And you have a lot more things that you will obtain in order to help others. And there's so many other benefits that I can't possibly name because we may not even find out until this life is over. And so God is faithful in the sunny, fun times like when we first came to Christ, and even in the valleys. And in this race, some of us just freeze in the valley because of fear, because you can't see anything. In the world's eyes, that's very understandable. But with us Christians, we have Jesus. He lives in us, and we have his word. And so during these times, it's a time of training, time of purpose. And so keep it simple in the valley too. Just trust and obey God. And definitely don't try to go backwards. There is no backwards in this race. Keep on moving forward by trusting and obeying God. When it gets too complex, there's too many things swimming in your mind, too many things trying to have you think about this or that. Just trust and obey. Trust and obey. And you can do that by spending regular time in his word, the Bible, and regular time in prayer. And try to fellowship with other Christians. Join a good Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church and join a small group. Be around Christians. And so I also want to talk about giving up. Like runners in the marathon, a lot of them, I'd imagine the ones who give up, and I gave up sometimes when I was running too, is the pain. It hurts. Your heart is, thumping, and your legs might start hurting. And sometimes that is enough to just make us think, feel, oh, I can't do this anymore. And you just give up. And the reality is a lot of times it's usually not physical. We're able to do it, but we mentally decide that this is too much pain. I can't do it. And so we give up. But the runners that succeed, they ignore the pain. Even though it's hard to catch a breath because you're running so much and your legs are hurting. When you're in a marathon race, the professionals or even regular people running the race, they ignore the pain. They set it aside and they press on. And for runners, they say, I can do this. Come on, let's go. I can do this. But for us who are going through the valley, or it might just be a normal day and you're just so tired of life, It seems so long and keeps dragging on, and you want to give up. And you want to give up not because you're not able, but because of the pain. Whether you're in the valley or a normal day, sometimes that pain is so huge, and sometimes it hurts so much that you just want to give up. But in the same way with the marathon runners, you press on. But you don't press on by pushing those legs harder, like the marathon guys. You press on by trusting and obeying God. You keep on trusting and obeying God. And it's not, I can do this. It's Jesus can do this. It's not by your strength, not by your might, not by your wisdom. It's all by Jesus' strength, his might, and his wisdom, which is yours because he lives in you as a Christian. He is your life, and you can depend on him. He'll hold your hand through the times that are easy, hard, and difficult. He's always there for you. And so don't give up in this race. You keep moving forward by trusting and obeying. Trust in Jesus, trust in his promises, and know that even though you don't have the strength, Jesus does, and that's what matters. His grace is enough for you, and he will supply all your needs and make sure that you go through this race and finish. Because the Lord promised he will finish the good work that he has started in you. God bless you.